Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on delivering continuous SAP change with less effort and reduced risk. We hope to provide you with some new and useful information today, which you can put into action to really hopefully improve your SAP change management and SAP testing processes. Today's webinar is set for an hour, and we plan to have times for questions and answers at the end. It's being recorded. Wanted to let everybody know, so everyone will get a link to the recording. These slides that we're presenting, you can actually download them from the handouts section of your GoToWebinar interface if you choose to, or if that doesn't work, you can always contact us, of course, afterward for a copy of the slides. We'd be happy to send them to you. Because we've had over 150 people register for today's webinar, we're asking that any questions you have, you put in the chat window, and we'll do our best to answer the questions at the end. Because it would be hard to take questions verbally with a large number of participants here today. So again, thank you for joining, and let me see if I can start. There we go. Moving ahead. Today's webinar is a joint webinar between Rev-Trac and Qualibrate. I'll let our partners at Qualibrate quickly say hello and introduce themselves, and we actually might share cameras here at the very beginning as we're doing the introductions.
Hi, everyone. A very warm welcome and a good morning or afternoon, depending on which region you're located. Quick introduction from my side. Thank you, Dan, for doing the introductions. So my name is Rudy, Manager of Alliances and New Business here at Qualibrate. And together with the team today, we will be presenting you a joint, like say, proposition of Rev-Trac and Qualibrate. So looking forward to that. I'll keep it short, so we have enough time to stick to the program. And I'll quickly allow my colleague Haida to introduce himself as well.
Hello, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're located. My name is Haida Visser. I'm a DevOps engineer specialized in quality assurance. And today I'll give the demo around Qualibrate.
Great, thanks, Haida. And this is Dan McGran. I was speaking earlier. I'm the Rev-Trac sales director based in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. I've been with Rev-Trac for about 6.5 years and in the SAP technical change management space, meaning SAP transport type activity for about 15. Happy to be here with everyone today and join forces here with Qualibrate to perhaps introduce some new ways of thinking to solve some new problems that SAP customers are experiencing these days. So we're going to go off camera now, just so we're not stealing the screen shots for the slides in the demo, and we'll probably come back to an on-camera mode during the Q&A session a little while longer. So today we're going to take a quick look at why SAP change is risky, even more so today than it has been in the past. We're going to discuss what we see SAP customers doing today in order to, and planning to do in the future, and to manage those SAP change risks that they're experiencing. And then we'll discuss some new ways that Rev-Trac and Qualibrate are helping customers in some key areas. Then we'll have a very informative and I think interesting demonstration from Qualibrate on their cloud-based SAP testing, documentation and training solution. Definitely a unique and very valuable offering. And finally, wrap up with a question and answer session. So that's what we have for you today during today's session. Okay. And I think we can all agree that making SAP making changes to SAP is risky, right? It always has been, always will be in the future. And that risk has grown over time, we think. If you think back, let's say 10, 15, or even more years, SAP environments were smaller, maybe with just a few SAP landscapes and SAP systems. There were a reasonable number of relatively simple business processes that you had to manage. And the interaction and, let's say, interdependency with other systems or applications was present, but not really at the scale that it is today. So things have gotten more complex. Then there's the higher demands, right, being placed on the SAP IT teams in terms of speed of delivery. The business users can't wait until the end of the month for the new functionality. They want it this week or sooner. Business requirements for faster delivery, we think, are here to stay, and SAP teams have to meet those demands so that the business can stay competitive in today's environments. And then there's SAP themselves, right? They're driving the need for more frequent change with more frequent updates. When you have a reasonably sized SAP environment with several SAP applications, ECC or S/4HANA, or as some customers are doing, running both in parallel today, and throw in BW and CRM, PI, gateway, business objects, data services, whatever might be out there, one of those or multiple of those are always in upgrade mode. So change is coming at SAP users from all directions. And this recent quote here from Christian Klein, the SAP CEO, states, quick reactions are needed to support today's dynamic business environments. And so teams have to find the right ways, and as we're hopefully going to show you today, some new ways of processing all these changes at a faster pace while dealing with the risks that these changes could introduce. So that's really what we want to dig into today. We do have an initial poll question. We only have two of them today, so I'm going to launch one here. I sometimes struggle with these, but I think I got it. Let me launch. Okay. I think you should be seeing a poll question that's asking, how often do you move changes into production? So if you care to, please, we'll leave this up here for 15 seconds or so, get some results, and I'll do my best to display the results. I know from previous webinars, sometimes I have a bit of a difficulty in sometimes sharing the results, but hopefully I'll be able to do that today. Okay, I'll let it go for a few more seconds here. And let me see, back to my poll interface. Okay, we're getting it. Let me see where I can, let me close the poll and share the results. Okay, let's see what we had here. Can I confirm that we are sharing? There we go. Okay, a little small for me, but about half of the people responding, and we have about 50 or so attending so far, handled their changes or releases on a weekly basis. That's very common. A small amount doing it weekly or every other week, and then the largest next one is monthly. So that corresponds a lot with what we see out in the world today in SAP customers. So thank you for that information. This is where I sometimes have to make sure I move back to stop sharing this part, hide, and make sure that we are back on track. Okay, and we are. Okay, so as we mentioned, SAP change risk has been here from the start. And of course, SAP customers have been managing those risks associated with those SAP changes for a long time now, ever since they started using SAP. And if you think about it, SAP's success and growth in the marketplace proves that customers have been successful in those efforts to manage that risk. After all, if those SAP customers weren't managing that SAP change risk very well, and they were experiencing major issues frequently, they probably would have slowed SAP's growth. And I think we all know that's not the situation. We know that SAP keeps growing and growing as a company and reaching more customers. But in today's world of, let's say, faster, and more, the existing processes and tools that have been successful in the past, they might need to change in order to support those increased demands. And because in our experience, many SAP customers still have highly manual approaches to SAP technical change management, meaning the transports and the SAP testing processes, right? And we know that those manual approaches are resource intensive. they take a lot of people to get those things done. My wife works in order processing in a large pharmaceutical company, right? And she spent the better part of 6 months over last winter and the spring as a tester for a large project, right? She was pulled off her main job and really just working on the testing aspects of this large SAP upgrade project. And I think that's typical for large companies where they rely heavily on internal resources to be pulled into those manual testing processes, and can certainly confirm in her experiences that the testing processes were highly manual, not really automated. So it just took a lot of resources and time to get it done. Of course, there's also a risk factor with manual methods because you can't always guarantee the consistency with those manual processes that you're trying to achieve. Also, manual approaches to SAP testing and to some extent SAP change management, that can slow down project delivery. Some situations, hopefully not, but some situations, if it slows down too much because of testing or change issues, it could lead to expensive project delays, right? So all this manual activity has a high, but sometimes overlooked cost associated with it. And that's why people are looking to move to more automated solutions that are out there. And here's a bit of a busy slide, but when you have multiple tools and also multiple siloed processes in place to support their SAP change management and testing requirements, sometimes we see that it's difficult to deliver consistent and cost-effective results, right? You might have seen diagrams similar to this, which show dozens of available tools to help with DevOps, right? This seems like this one was created by Computer Associates, which I grabbed from their website, which explains why the CA logo's all throughout the middle section of these things. But of course, not all of these tools apply to SAP DevOps. I think we know that they're mostly used in non-SAP areas actually, so for non-SAP applications, and only a few can actually help with SAP DevOps. But the point here isn't really to look at all these logos and tools, but it's really about the quality of the tools that you use, not the quantity. And getting your SAP teams to, let's say, use a set of highly automated and effective tools to support your requirements will help you to deliver those consistent and cost-effective results that you're trying to achieve. That's why Rev-Trac and Qualibrate are partnering, and we'll get into more about that partnership and how we work together as we move ahead. So when we think about it at Rev-Trac, we've been working with customers for well over 20 years, helping them automate and simplify their SAP change management processes. And in the past 5 years or so, we've seen a large increase in interest regarding automated SAP testing solutions. So when we talk about a complete solution, we're talking about a complete end-to-end process which addresses both your SAP change management and testing requirements. We think that recent interest is there because of the cost savings and, the cost savings and improved project delivery success when you're able to fix your software issues associated with SAP or software bugs earlier in the process. I think many people on today's webinar are familiar with the types of figures here in green that show the cost of fixing software increases dramatically as the software progresses from the development to the quality to your production environments. And that's the whole idea behind this shift left type of methodology that people have been employing over the past few years and trying to get there. They want to catch and fix SAP issues earlier in the development life cycle. And again, one other observation we've seen is that if you've automated your SAP testing, as some customers have, but you haven't automated your change management, you just shifted the bottleneck to your change management process sometimes, where the documentation and the manual processes slow you down. Or if you've done the other, there are lots of Rev-Trac customers on today's call, and you've gone through automation in some ways of your SAP change management processes with Rev-Trac, but you might not have automated your testing. So that all of a sudden becomes the bottleneck. So bringing those two together can really deliver some results that customers are looking for these days. So here's a diagram of what we're talking about with that complete solution, right? You'll recognize probably the basic SAP environment in the middle with a dev, a quality, and a production system there in the black middle. And Rev-Trac is shown there with those clipboards. And what we're doing there is representing a sample end-to-end approval and audit process for moving your SAP changes at the middle section there. With Rev-Trac, the steps you choose to configure are completely up to the customer and very flexible. So the ones you're seeing here by those clipboards are just examples. And then other applications, which you can see with some logos on the screen here, can integrate with Rev-Trac using native REST APIs to orchestrate things, and that's indicated by these blue and gray bidirectional arrows. And as an example, perhaps integrating with ServiceNow or other ITSM solution or some solution manager components, just a couple examples. But you also see integration points there with Qualibrate, sort of on the left-hand side, in the middle bottom, and the right, since Qualibrate covers not only the automated testing solution, but the initial business process documentation and SAP user training, all with this single cloud-based solution. You'll see how that works when Hida gets to the demo in about 10 or 15 minutes. And really, that's what we mean when we talk about reducing the number of tools in use, which will help you to deliver the changes and projects faster with reduced risk, right? You don't need hundreds of tools. You need a couple purpose-built tools that really work for your situation. So that's how Rev-Trac and Qualibrate are coming together to simplify this, deliver things at a faster and easier way. Okay, the second of 2 poll questions. We only have 2 today, so let's get through the second one. I'm going to bring it up. Okay, are you considering, I think it's this one. Yes, that's the one. Okay, I'm launching a second poll here. Make sure it's out there. Okay, it is. Yes, are you considering any of the following solutions in order to speed up your SAP change and release processes? So you have basically 4 choices, or the last one in there is that you're already using multiple ones of these today. So I'll let that go for about 15 or 20 seconds to get some responses. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. Okay, we're getting some. I think I'll close that down because we have a we have some. Let me manage. Oh, let me share the poll now. Okay. So what we're seeing is that a good amount are already using automated testing. Some are using, about 20% or so are using SAP automated change management solution like Rev-Trac, or perhaps others. Not a whole lot going on the impact analysis side from the audience today. And some are using a bunch, a little bit on test data management. Test data management we hadn't mentioned before, but there are some tools out there to make sure that you have good testing and scrambled testing, if you will, into your dev and quality system, so that you can actually execute on some of the testing earlier in your process. So very good. Let me shift this. Whoops. Polls. Hide. Come back. Okay. So it's clear, we think that in many cases the processes and the tools and even the internal teams will need to evolve in order to manage SAP change risk in these dynamic environments that we're experiencing today. And we definitely need some new ways of thinking and doing to be successful in there, right? So, and we're seeing customers make those necessary changes. We did a webinar just over 3 years ago. I really couldn't believe that it was that long ago, that it was 3 years ago, but I double checked and it was back in 2018. And at that time, we talked about 5 SAP change types, which our customers consistently use to safely process 80 to 90% of their SAP changes, the overwhelming majority of their changes. And those types are listed here, sort of on the left-hand bullet points here. Of course, not all customers use the same names for these SAP changes. That's why each type here has different names to describe it. And customers certainly have their own unique processes or steps for the different change types, meaning that they don't follow some type of cookie cutter or inflexible or rigid process, right? But we have found that most SAP customers use some combination of these types to get things done in terms of SAP change management. And lately, many customers have enhanced those processes in an automated way in order to help them reduce SAP change risk even further. So let me dig into a couple examples of what we mean by that. Have that on the next slide here. Okay, so a normal change, right? Maybe you call them weekly or planned or some other terminology, or just that. If we think back to the survey results a few minutes ago, over 50% of the people said they have a sort of a weekly normal move to production. So that's what we're talking about here. Basic run-of-the-mill SAP changes that are supporting the business and the underlying SAP technology stacks. The writing in black on these next few slides is the same writing from 3 years ago. So that hasn't really changed, but the red-white writing shows some examples of new automated processes that customers are starting to introduce into these workflows. So looking at this example workflow, Rev-Trac, even 3, 4, even longer years ago, was already reducing the risks with its automatic sequencing checks and automatic dependency checks. Some of you might be familiar with. They're underlined in this workflow and the next ones. But now that SAP has things such as Code Inspector, and we have a built-in integration with Rev-Trac into Code Inspector, customers can, for example, automatically send their workbench transports to ATC or ABAP Test Cockpit 100% of the time to easily enforce coding practices and improve the quality before the SAP transport is ever released. That's what we're showing with the red dot there, code inspection sometime early in your process, let's say. Moving further down in the workflow, we didn't see this in the survey results, but customers are starting to add an impact analysis step to gain insight into the change impact by using maybe third-party solutions from companies like Panaya or LiveCompare, or in some cases, the basic impact analysis, which comes with Rev-Trac in our latest releases. Doing that impact analysis helps them identify gaps in test coverage for the riskier changes. And then there's the one that's getting a lot of attention these days. That's the automated SAP testing integration, which can be established to automate and track the script or regression testing, which may be required by these customers. So those 3 areas identified in red on this slide, they really can significantly reduce SAP change risk. And since they're automated and orchestrated by Rev-Trac, customers can be certain that those steps aren't omitted or skipped by the users, right? They can make sure that they're enforced 100% of the time. So that we wanted to take what we were talking about several years ago and explain it in the light of risk reduction here. So the code inspection, impact analysis, and the auto SAP testing integration are 3 areas where we're seeing customers really incorporate more automation to reduce their risk with integrating into some of these other tools. So in the interest of time, I have the emergency and the low impact and the others. I'm just going to briefly explain how these new red areas can be used in the other SAP change types we show here, right? So maybe almost all customers have to deal with an emergency change. Maybe you call it critical or P1 change. And you might expect not to see as many of the newer steps in red because of the emergency status, but in reality, if they're fully automated, you can choose to apply them here as well. Again, we don't dictate how customers do it, but we're seeing customers use these so that they're consistent across their normal changes, their emergency changes, and so on. But then if you look at a low impact change, which we see a lot of customers have these days, or pre-approved or low risk change, you might call it, there is less red here because of these types of changes by their nature. They don't require as much testing or analysis, right? So I did want to highlight one important area to keep an eye on with a low impact change. It's underlined here. You don't want users classifying other types of change as low impact, right? Users, it could be appealing to them to classify them as low impact because it might be a quick way to get a change moved, but of course it's not meant for those higher risk changes that need more testing and documentation. So it's a good idea to have the software automatically check if the SAP change is really a low impact change by looking at the objects and based on the contents of the SAP transports. And Rev-Trac automates that with easy to configure whitelists, they're called. So you can make sure that people don't try to sneak in a higher risk change into your low impact fast track type of process that you have here. And then wrapping these up, when you look at enhancement types of changes or project changes, which are shown on these next 2 slides, you might call them something different. You'll see similar steps to the initial normal change that we described, but these 2 examples also show some extra possible points of integration, maybe even an extra additional SAP system, like we're showing here, a staging system that you might have incorporated into your landscape. And again, no 2 customers manage these processes the exact same way, and these are just some samples. Many times we see customers integrating a development tool like Jira or Azure DevOps as part of these project or enhancement changes. But really focusing and looking at the red areas again, you'll see that the same ones we talked about before, code inspection, impact analysis, and the SAP automated testing can be automated in a similar way with these types of changes, all using the Rev-Trac tool and our REST API integrations, which gives you the results you're looking for, which is to decrease SAP change risk, really speeding up that process while also improving quality. So I'm sort of wrapping up with my slides here, whoops. But before I pass things over to Rudy, I did want to briefly show an example of how Rev-Trac works with these risk reduction areas. And I will go quick because I need to do a quick time check here. So let's just start with about a 1 minute recorded demonstration here. And this shows how Rev-Trac is integrated with ABAP Test Cockpit. So we have a Rev-Trac which has a workflow step shown up on that ribbon bar. Let's say it's the normal workflow. It has a single transport with an object which violates some ATC rule which was set up. So we're approving the Rev-Trac request. Or actually, here's the object, excuse me. And it has some very basic things that the purpose of this is for demonstration purposes to violate an ATC check. So now we're going to come in and do a Rev-Trac approval with our web interface. It's telling us that it came from the D75 system, so it's going to move to the Q75 system. If it were a different source system, it would move to a different target system. But before it does that, we're going to automatically reach out to ABAP Test Cockpit and see the results. And you can see them at the very top, right? We have a very quick error message that we found 2 ATC errors, and we cannot move forward because of those ATC errors, right? We have to fix them before we even release the transport request, right? The only thing we can do here in a second is click on the OK button, which doesn't give the approval. And then in this very basic example, we would have to go in and fix this program so we're not violating any ATC checks. By the way, this would also work with other third-party solutions like Code Profiler, which used to be owned by Virtual Forge, but now owned by Anapsys, similar type functionality, right? So we'll go ahead, quickly fix things. Again, a very simple example. We just commented out that change. We try and approve it again. And we see the results here as soon as we hit continue, that there were no errors found with the ATC check. So again, I just wanted to give a very quick example of how Rev-Trac has these automated integrations with tools such as Code Inspector or impact analysis solutions, as well as the testing solutions such as Qualibrate to kick off these tests automatically, process the results in an intelligent and fully automated way. So with that, I'm going to come back to my slides and then pass over to Rudy at Qualibrate to take over.
Thank you, Dan. Just waiting.
Pretty much.
For the
Here we go. Make presenter.
presenter
And
mode.
Coming your way, Rudy.
There we go. Show my screen. Can you give me a quick heads up, Dan, that you're seeing my screen?
Perfect. Yes.
All right, so it's there. That's good. Let me just clean up my own screen so I got it in front of me. All right, everyone. First of all, Dan, thank you very much for this explanation and this connection between Rev-Trac and Qualibrate. I will try to focus as much as possible on how we connect the dots. I like the overview which Dan showed you, where you saw Qualibrate being presented or actually showed 3 times, one at the documentation aspect, one at the testing aspect, and one at the training aspect. This is also basically what we try to explain, and which highly connects to what the problems that we try to solve with Qualibrate. I will time box my presentation bit as much as possible because I want to give more time to Hidde to be able to actually do a product demo. But it is important to point out what problems we try to solve before we start showing the product. So interesting enough, we get approached pretty often because of the test automation capabilities of Qualibrate. But to be able to eventually automate testing, you have to first go all the way back to the beginning, which is what do the business processes look like? And typically people that have knowledge of those processes. You could call them the business process owners, even though that's not a specific job title most of the time. But these people, they work within their software, doing their processes on a daily basis, and they just know it by heart. Extracting that knowledge is what you need to do to be able to even think about creating test cases. So this is the first step. Now, how do you extract that knowledge from, that resides in their minds so that they know by heart? And this is where we use Qualibrate. So we start at the very beginning. Once you have a clear overview of those business processes and you have them documented in a SaaS solution in a dynamic way, which is not static, so you can just maintain it and dynamically change whatever needs to be changed, then you can start thinking about, okay, so how can I manually test these cases? You don't have to go for test automation immediately. It's funny enough, a lot of companies that we get in contact with, they say, if I can just accelerate my manual testing, I will be a very happy person. So we start focusing on that first. Needless to say, for us, this is connected. Whenever you have this, you on the fly get this because it's the same output of one input, which I'll show you in a second and which Hidde will show you in the product demo. We have a bonus added to it whenever you have a change or an implementation project, be it small or large. You will have new ways of working with the software. So a change manager will want to train the whole team on how the software works after change has taken place or after implementation has been done. We connect training material to it, so you don't have to go back and create the documentation again to be able to transfer it or convert it into training material. So we keep it connected. Now, we call this the standard approach because from like most companies that don't have solutions or tooling to do it all together, they will do all 4 of these deliverables separately, done by different teams with different solutions. There's a lot of going back and forth. It's not in sync by default. It takes a lot of time. Needless to say, it's very time consuming. So what we try to do, and that was actually the aim of Qualibrate ever when we started, creating the product, is to combine those 4 deliverables and make it an output of one input. And basically the input, which Hidde will show you in a second, is a recording. So you will go into the software, log in, do whatever you have to do. You log out and you save that process. Once you hit save, then Qualibrate is smart enough to recognize everything that has been going on in the front, but also technically in the back. So it will create an overview, which is a Kanban-like overview of your process. It will give you the ability to run this manually for your UAT, for example, user acceptance testing. You can run it automatically because it creates that test script on the fly while you do the recording, and it creates training material, which could be either plugging into the application application on the test, or you could just have the training material as a video, depending on which objective you want to achieve. Now, working this way, you enable teams to be in sync, to keep both the documentation as well as the testing, as well as the training, actually 3 deliverables in sync at all times. So this is a high-level overview of what we do. Now, this overview actually shows you what there is added to it. So let me quickly zoom in here, because I know from experience this can become very small if I don't zoom in. In the centerpiece, you see documentation, building a process library, adding your data sets. In this area, you see the testing capabilities, manual testing, test automation with execution logs, and a defect management module included. The learning material, creating training documentation, virtual training simulations, etc. Now on this side, also in the blue layer, it's the management layer. So you have your dashboarding, real-time reporting, a module called test plans, where you can schedule your test cases in bulk, in advance, automatically, etc. And this is basically the core of Qualibrate, everything in blue. Now, we started supporting more and more platforms. We cover everything that SAP has to offer, both on the on-prem editions as well as in the cloud editions. We started getting customers and partners asking for, do you cover other ERP platforms like Workday and Salesforce? We do. They asked, do you support my custom-made portal? We do. We cover everything that runs on SAP or runs for SAP, like SuccessFactors as well, any Fiori applications. And we cover ERP platforms, and we cover everything that runs as a web-based application. That's basically the coverage of Qualibrate. We always say, Qualibrate can go really, really fast as like a Formula One car, but you have to drive it on the track, right? You have to drive it on the racetrack, which is the applications that we cover. Then we look at the integrations. We integrate with, the biggest and the best players out there regarding test data management, API testing if necessary, of course CI/CD tooling. Needless to say, we integrate with Rev-Trac. So this is what we try to do. We focus on our core product and integrate with whatever is connected to our proposition. All right, now there's one important connector or integration that we point out, specifically connected to SAP, which is the SAP Solution Manager connector, which means that if you're highly invested into Solution Manager, now you can activate and use Qualibrate from Solution Manager, and all the information will be interchanged or actually exchanged between both solutions. This was a highly requested feature from our customers and our partners, and this also puts us in a certified place. So we got SAP certified for our solution Qualibrate, which is really nice. Really quick, there's different ways we can implement. We could do it completely outsourced. If you have an implementation partner or a service provider that covers everything regarding new moduling or new implementations on SAP, we can work with them. If you have a company that does all your testing for you, we can enable them. If you want to do it completely in-house, we can do that as well. So then we will enable and train your team. And there's also the option for a hybrid approach where there are some outsourced, some resources outsourced, and some people in-house working together. Either way, we work with different models, and we're actually accustomed to working with a different model every time. We go live in hours, not in months. We have a SaaS solution, which has the benefits of going really fast. The UI is very intuitive, very simple, which also gives us the advantage of speed and onboarding fast. Implementation itself, actually, it takes us 1 day to set up everything regarding the users. It takes us only 3 days to do a basic end user training for the whole team, which already gives you the capability to start creating content. Truth to be told, we focus on key users specifically for advanced and admin training, which even within the largest customers that we have, it's only 1 or 2 people. Mostly it's also connected to system integrators or service providers. But this is really fast, and this is something we're really proud of. Quick overview of some of our customers and actually several different industries. We just depicted different industries right here. And as you probably can see, if you know some of the logos, these are all large enterprises where test automation, process documentation in an accelerated way, and UAT in an accelerated way becomes very valuable and interesting. 3 takeaways before I hand it over to Hidde. First of all, we don't just focus on test automation, even though this is a killer feature. We focus on process documentation, test automation, manual testing, and training material. So that's very important to point out, especially if you start comparing it with other solutions in the market. We are completely non-technical. Our UI is non-technical. So if you look at other solutions in the market, they are either semi-technical or completely technical, which takes a whole different approach. We try to take the approach that OutSystems and Mendix does towards software development, and we take it towards software testing. TCO, total cost of ownership, is low due to the SaaS solution. Setup installation is really quick. Onboarding and training is quick because we have a very simple UI. You need less users. You can go faster. So this makes the TCO extremely low compared to some other solutions in the market. All right. I'm not going to explain this again, but this is my this is the slide in where I hand it over to you, Hidde, to do the product demo.
Okay, coming your way, Hida.
Yep.
Okay, I'm making that change now, Rudy. And Hida, you should be able to share in just a moment. Perfect.
Yep. You can see my screen now? Perfect.
We are seeing it, yes.
Well, thank you, Rudy. Now, before we jump into the product itself, I think it would be good to get a general overview of the steps that we're about to go through. So the first step will be on how efficiently we document the business processes. The second one will be on how we use that information to run our automated tests or manual tests. And last but not least, on how we aggregate all the data to show you the relevant reports. Now let's quickly jump into Collaborate. What I would like to show you today is how efficiently users can create content within Collaborate. And as my colleague already explained, Collaborate is not only a testing platform that accelerates test automation, but we have also built a solution that addresses the problems on creating process documentation and using that information to create also learning materials, which in my opinion is quite relevant to deliver good quality projects. So during the demo of today, I'm going to impersonate a business analyst that knows the application which is under test. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to generate the content within Collaborate. From this, how easy it is to use that content for either testing or learning purposes. So typically what the user will do within Collaborate is to navigate to the flows area. And as you can see over here already, there are quite some flows defined. But for this demo, I'll be creating a new flow from scratch. So for today's demo, we're going to create a sales order using the ECC system within SAP, and it's the Rev-Trac demo for today. Clicking save. So what you see here now is actually the carcass of the recording. Now the next step will be when the user is well versed in the application and the application is also available, we can start the recording by simply clicking on the record now button. Now within a few seconds, you will be presented by what we call the recording widget. And one of the things you notice in the context of simplicity is that this recording widget is very easy to use. And actually, we as a team made a conscious decision here where we removed as much of complexity as possible from this control so that the user can concentrate on one single thing, which is the application under test. So as soon as the user is ready, we can start the recording. So I have SAP over here and I'll start the session. And over here, I'll rename this to SAP login. And from here, I'll fill in the details. So user 11 and my credentials. And I'll start logging in. Now, as you can see over here, is that all the steps are being recorded. And for example, over here, you can see that we filled in the username. But this also gives you the opportunity that if you made a mistake, for example, you can adjust those values on the fly. And it's also being saved automatically. So now we're ready to move into the next chapter, which is the create sales order. And maybe good actually to explain a little bit why I call out chapters, because within Collaborate, we define those chapters to make the recording more readable in the end, which I'll show you a little bit later on as soon as we move into the digital document. So now I'm ready to move to the next phase, which is the sales order. And here I'm going to fill in the organizational data. And I'm going to press enter. And now on the next screen is where we define the details about the sales order. And this is where the user who is doing the recording, he knows what to fill in, right? So he also knows what data exists within this specific environment. And now what we're actually trying to achieve here is to put the business analyst in the driving seat of the recording process. So I'll just fill in the data here, the PO number, the material, and the quantity. I'll press enter. And in a bit, I'll get a pop-up. And now I'm able to save the document. Save it. And again, the recorder will capture every single action on behalf of the user. Now, if, for example, you would like to extract transactional data from the SAP system, we can achieve this by using the store feature from the recording widget, which is over here. So as you can see here in the status bar, we have a standard order with an order number has been saved. Now, in this demo, I'll be storing that data. And you can see here the user action is a store action with the recorded value of the standard order, and then the order number has been saved. What we can also do here, because I'm not interested in the whole text of the recorded value, I can adjust it a little bit in the configuration tab. And instead of selecting the text property, I can also do the message parameter 1, for example. And as soon as you hover over those values or those options, you can already see the values that are coming back, right? So I'm going to choose this one. I'm going to click save. And then I'll move to the next section, which is the display sales order. And that is going to be in the MVA03. And that is the order we just created. And over here, we can do some validations, for example. So for the demo purposes, I'll do a validation on the net value of 2600, which can be achieved by using the verify option from the recording widget. I'll take that one and then click on the net value. And then again, what we can also do is on the configuration tab, for example, we can do, instead of the verification operator on contains, we can also do does not contain or does not equal to, which gives you the opportunity to do also negative testing. So if I choose for that one and do the validation on the fly, it will give me the result of false, because we're looking for 2600, which is also the value within the system. But for demo purposes, I'll keep it simple. And I'm going to cancel this one. Now, I'm pretty satisfied with the recording for now, so I'm going to finalize it, and I'll do the log off. And within SAP, I'll close the session. Now, there's one single thing I need to do, which is to save the recording. And now everything will be uploaded into the cloud. This means all the chapters from login to SAP, to create the sales order, to display the sales order, and the log off, together with all the steps. And those steps also include screenshots for every step. And those will all be uploaded into the cloud. Now, when the widget will tell us that the upload is successful, then we will see the chapters popping up, which is going to happen in a bit. There we go. So I made a little mistake here because I did it the SAP login a little bit later, but you have the ability to also move, let's say, steps between other chapters. So I'm going to move this one to here, and I actually could delete this one. Anyway, these are the chapters being defined. So What I've just shown you is how easily it is to use the recorder, and which means you don't have to be an expert to do the recording, right? Now, how can we use this content in general? Well, first of all, what you see here is what we call a digital document. And you have the option to share this with your team. You can share it with a deep link, so you can click this one and then share it with anyone within the organization. But you can also use this, and that is actually the deep link, which can also be used is, for example, you have a new member joining the team, and you want to get them up to speed with with your processes, actually. So, for example, how to create a sales order within SAP. You can also share this document by clicking, or to export the document by clicking the export, which gives you the opportunity to export to a PDF. Now, let me include the screenshots in there. And in a bit, we will get a notification message telling us that the document is ready to download. So I'm going to click it. Now, what will happen is that we will download the functional user instruction file. And within this export, you can see, for example, some metadata about the flow. So the unique flow ID, the severity, and also the status of the flow, with together a deep link or a link to the online reference, which is the digital document in the cloud. Now, if we navigate a little bit further, you will see the chapters together with also the steps. And below there, we even get the chapters together with the detailed steps, also including the screenshots and highlighting the object that we interacted with during the recording. Now, if we navigate into, or if we navigate back to the digital document, well, maybe also good to explain a little bit. To achieve something similar to this kind of level of documentation is to have a person manually taking screenshots of the application under test and put those into a Word document together with the details of every step, right? So, in which, in my opinion, is quite some manual labor over there. So I think it's really a very efficient way of working to use this feature. Now let's move back to the digital document. Maybe good as a recap so far. I've shown you how easy it is to do a recording and also how to extract documentation with a couple of clicks. And now, as I also explained earlier, we do not use this only for documentation purposes, but we can also use this as the same source of truth for testing. So if we, for example, there is a change request in Rev-Trac that needs to be delivered to production as quickly as possible, we can attach this digital document as an automated test within the pipeline of Rev-Trac, and we can execute this test automatically unattended, for example, during the night. So let's quickly execute this one. I'm going to use the runner. And for the demo purposes, I'll be using the automated runner or the automated mode. You also have the manual mode or as an option, and the virtual trainer. As Rudy already explained, we have a whole training area within Collaborate that, yeah, especially used for training purposes. So I'm going to use the automated mode. I'm going to execute it, run it. So now the automated test is executed, and for demo purposes, we execute this in the foreground. So you see SAP being displayed. But in reality, we will execute this in a pipeline and using a virtual machine, which is either hosted in the cloud or on premise, whatever the customer prefers. So it's going to fill in the sales order now. And then I will move to the display sales order and does the validation. Which is about now. So we just reached our, I think, third wow moment. The first one was how easy it is to generate the digital document by recording the process. The second one is how we can utilize that digital document for documentation purposes by exporting the document into a PDF file. And the third one was how easy it is to execute the test in general. Now I'm going to show you the execution logs. Now, for every execution we do, either it's manual or automated, it will generate a execution log. And this execution log describes the audit trail log for every single activity that was conducted within the system under test. So if I open the log file, what we see here is if I expand, for example, the display sales order and also the step for verifying the net value, is that we see the start time of the, let's say, the step, how long it took to execute it, in which mode it was, and also the expected value that we expected within the system, the actual value within the system, and the result of that step. Now, it also includes a screenshot with a highlight of the object. Now, this information lives and breathes on the cloud, right, and is accessible for the whole team and can also be shared in the same way as what we do with the documentation. So you can share it via deep link, but similar, we can also export this into a PDF. Now, I'm going to leave this as default. I'm going to export. And again, this is being processed on server side. So as soon as the document is available, we will get a notification and we can start downloading the file. Now, instead of that, we see the flow being described over here. We have the execution report with an overall execution status, some metadata of the execution instead of the flow. And over here, we will see the chapters together with the steps and also the data being used during execution. And if we drill down a little bit further, you will also get the detailed steps of the execution. So over here, for example, we have the type value in username together with the screenshot and the highlight of the object. Now look, guys, I've shown you a tip of the iceberg on the topics of process documentation and testing. But we did not cover modules around scenarios, which is also a big thing within Collaborate, and the ability for using data sets. We have a module for test plans and defects also. So for scenarios, those are being used to change flows, so one flow after another. And the data sets are being used to provide different data within the same flow, for example. And for test plans, you can plan your releases over there. Now, if you're interested in those areas, then please reach out to us so we can give some more details around those areas, or even plan a separate demo session. Now, to finalize the whole demonstration for today, there's one single thing that I would like to show you, which is the dashboard area. So everything that happens within Collaborate can be reported upon. So in real time, we aggregate data that can help you to tell a story to your stakeholders, either in terms of where the project is, what the status of the quality is of the project, etc. So just to show you really briefly, we have an out-of-the-box reporting capability that can deliver those kind of updates to the team, right? This is the general dashboard, but there are more out-of-the-box dashboards. You can also create or generate new ones. But for example, this one, you have the overview of the failed scripts of last week, together with the defects by status. Well, this was the demonstration. I'm gonna give the lead back to Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for that. Was, you know, I don't have a whole lot of experience with putting training materials together and recordings, but have done things for customers over the years. And what you just showed in 10 or 15 minutes is saving days and days of work from my limited experience. So I'd imagine with SAP customers, it's such a huge time saver and really helps you get everything in order very quickly. So Thank you very much for that. We are wrapping up here, so let me take over for 1 minute, and we do have a couple questions that came in. Cancel there. This is me. Make presenter. Okay, so just a quick final thoughts, right? We covered why SAP change is risky and how that's evolved over time, and business keeps on moving faster, and you need to deliver SAP changes and releases faster with the appropriate testing and documentation. And you really, hopefully you got some new ways of thinking, especially with what Collaborate was talking about today and demonstrating in pulling all of that together and reducing the amount of tools to give you a very easy to use and cloud-based solution, along with how Rev-Trac customers have been incorporating other aspects to reduce risk, such as the code inspection and the impact analysis and the automated testing steps. And really, when you're looking at this, you want to take a look at the entire end-to-end solution. Really do your research and pick the right number of limited purpose-built tools to achieve what you're trying to achieve, right? So with that, I think I was going to put the camera back on here for a moment, and we did have a couple questions. Not the best camera angle here for me, a little dark in here. So here was the first one. I have to send it. Yeah. Oh well. How is Collaborate different from other tools such as WorkSoft, Certify? This seems similar, and is there any RPA capability like that? So I think I'll just have to send that over to the Collaborate team there for a quick answer.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, this is one of the questions we get very often as we move from a dark horse position. I think if we compare ourselves to, I'd say, the big three, and you mentioned two of them, we compare and we differ from them on three aspects. One of them is on the UI. So their UI is either semi-technical or very technical. So they don't have the approach towards creating a UI that's completely non-technical and for business stakeholders to be able to use it, or else you won't be able to ask them to do the recordings. That will become too difficult. So that's one. The second one is very obvious. It's finance, right? It's total cost of ownership. So that's completely different. And the third one is actually speed. So setup, installation, onboarding, training. We can go so much faster than you would be used to. And I think maybe, between brackets, the fourth one could also be the most important one. We're completely SaaS solution, which actually is a unique aspect. I know our competitors are trying to move towards that, but they've been around for so long that it's difficult to just take their solution and, create a completely SaaS solution out of it. So that's some of the things we notice when we compare it. I hope that answers the questions. If not, you can always.
It's a quick 1, 2, 3, 4 comparison. That's good, Rudy. We had another one here and it's a good question. What is driving which automated tests are executed when a change is ready for SIT or UAT phases of the change management workflow? So certainly an important question. And my quick opinion on that is, people are trying to solve that now, right? You take the impact analysis, and based on the impact of the changes, which test script should you run, right? That's it's a very good question and a hard problem to solve, and companies are pulling that together, sort of linking the impact analysis steps with the test execution and test coverage steps. But from my experience, that's still sort of a work in progress, right? Companies are trying to get to that point and bridge that gap between the impact analysis and the testing. But what I've seen in the marketplace is it's still evolving rapidly as we speak. I don't know if the Collaborate team has anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. I think it's a funny thing. If you do a lot of UAT, then change impact analysis is very important. This is basically also why we created the Solution Manager connector, because if you have everything there, it makes it much easier to make use of that. Now, Rev-Trac also has that capability. If you are talking about transferring like a big portion of your UAT to test automation, if you have the capability to do that, and you know it's possible within the IT landscape. I don't want to try to communicate a utopia, but if it's possible, then you don't really need a lot of change impact analysis, because now you've transferred it towards automation. Then the small portion that you have left that you still have to test manually, it's still important to do change impact analysis. But we notice our customers, they start moving towards automation, and they see how they can connect the dots easily instead of taking a lot of time and effort. They don't never move away from UAT, but it differs. The percentages differ. So we get a couple of customers saying, we were looking at change impact analysis. Now we moved a lot of stuff towards automation. It's still important, but it's not as important to buy a very expensive product to cover that. So it's not really the answer you were looking for, probably, but it is an interesting topic. Yeah.
No, it is, and to me that's a hard one, and an area that I'm keeping a close eye on is how to bring all that together. And I liked your answer, Rudy. So thank you for that. Very good. Well, I know we're just past the top of the hour, and
Okay.
we will, Hida, thank you very much for the demonstration, and Rudy for the introduction to Qualibrate. And hopefully everyone.
Thank you, Hida. Thank you, Dan.
We enjoyed today, and we hope the audience enjoyed it. They were the only two questions that we had so far, so I think we did a good job of explaining what our solutions do and how they can potentially work together. And please be in contact with us for additional information. As Hida said, it was just the tip of the iceberg for the Qualibrate solution, as well as with Rev-Trac, with our automating and simplifying SAP change management. There's a lot more to it that we didn't cover today. There are demonstrations on our website that you can access if you want more information, and we'd be happy to. Oh, one more came in here. Is it compliance with SOX and other I'm assuming I can't read the entire question. With SOX and other type of, 21 CFR Part 11 for FDA regulated and things like that is, I can say with Rev-Trac software, we have many FDA regulated companies using Rev-Trac, and it passes their internal 21 CFR Part 11 audits. So I don't say that Rev-Trac has a certification checkbox for that, but it can be set up in a way to pass your audits and keep your auditors happy for that. And I would imagine, I don't want to answer for Qualibrate, but it's, it can help with that documentation and validation processes with those highly regulated companies. Is that an accurate answer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, all of our customers, besides the fact that they drag us through sometimes weeks of assessment regarding security and compliance and all of those checks, and every single customer that we have right now dragged us through that whole journey. Nice. So yeah, we've been through that. So we cover for all of those aspects regarding the ISO certification, etc. Yeah, okay. I know that's an important aspect. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, especially today with the highly secure. With the incidents that are going on, we have to deliver software in a secure manner. We get similar questions as well.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Very good. Okay. Well, the recording will go out to everyone that's attended. If you wanted to review certain parts again or share it with your colleagues, we want to thank everybody again for joining us today, and have a good rest of your day or evening, wherever you may be. I'm going to.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the evening.
Bye-bye.